what I value so much is bringing creative and community together and seeing how those two worlds are not too far from each other in reality, and how when they come together, it can be really powerful and really beautiful. Hello, and welcome to the Unusual Creative Podcast. My name is Niyia Mack, and my pronouns are she, her. I am the founder and creator of The Unusual Creative. We're a consulting agency that offers project planning, concept development, creative strategy, and we're available for speaking engagements if you're interested. My hope with this podcast, The Unusual Creative Podcast, was to start a space where I can have great conversations with friends, other professionals, and industry leaders, and just talk a bit more about how our worlds are connected. So I thought Rachel, my friend Rachel here, would be a great first I say co-guest to have. And she and I will just be having a bit more of a chat about the unusual creative and a bit more about me as we get started. So Rachel, please introduce yourself to the podcast and let them know your pronouns, anything that you'd like to share, and I'll talk a bit more about how we know each other once we get started.
Hi, my name is Rachel. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm a full-time mom currently. That's a job. I used to work in marketing and performing arts world, and I think that's where I met Naya.
Yeah.
And I think where we met was a very interesting time during my career process because I just moved from LA Phil to Pasadena Playhouse. I think that was about 2017. And Naya had been already there. You went through so many different steps, like from that place. And she just knows the background and she was just there um for a couple of years at that point. And I feel like our big project together that made us sisters was like we actually collabed together working on the block party.
On the block party, we co-produced. Yeah.
Yeah. And she just did, there was 2 stages. I don't know how many acts we had. Like there were so many acts, right? I wanted to start it off with this because it was just an amazing accomplishment at this organization. So do you want to talk a little bit about that? Like how you set that up as a producer? Like
Thank you so much for bringing that up because I remember that our worlds, we were working parallel because part of marketing, I was working in community engagement and just also just helping co-produce a lot of events that sort of popped up and needed a home, if you will. And yeah, you and I were given the opportunity to co-produce the block party, which for us was, first of all, the first time the Pasadena Playhouse had ever put on an event like that. Second of all, the artistic director was very clear about wanting it to be free, wanting it to be community focused, and really entrusted us with like putting together all of the entertainment and all of the logistics and elements in between. So I guess that speaks to our work ethic and just like the experience that we brought to the table. But I remember you and I both being like, okay, this is an undertaking. Okay. And also, it's worth saying, like, the Pasadena Playhouse was celebrating its 100th year anniversary. So,
yeah.
it being a state theater of California, it has a very historical significance to Pasadena. Yeah, it was just a huge event, and I think there were over 10,000 people that ended up attending.
Yeah.
And it was, yeah, truly one for the books. That's all.
Yeah.
I'm saying.
I remember you, like there were kids stage and there was a main stage.
Yeah.
And so you had to produce both stages happening simultaneously
That is
at the different side of the theater. So then like main stage was like a little bit more geared towards adults. Like, we had a lot of acts there. And then another one was kids stage where you had to deal with that. It was just like a whole different monster.
Yeah.
And I think people came for the programs. Like, I think, you actually had a solid program made for the community. And I think this was the first community event that was free that actually brought so many people around that area. And like, kudos to you. I remember us kind of like looking at each other thinking like, is this really happening? Right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. All of our expectations were sort of being exceeded at the same time because we just didn't know what to expect.
Yeah. And I think during that time, we kind of you were very into the community part of it, which I think it kind of leads to where your heart is. Like you care about people, you care about where the artisticness of each organization come from, and it was very well curated. Like if that makes sense. So, and I think that kind of brings me to where you went to next, and then where you are now. Do you want to kind of talk about that process of going from a theater? And I know you had like side gigs here and there before you landed where you were. So, do you want to kind of talk about your journey there? Did it how you landed in with the Unusual Creative?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's a great question because as a producer, especially a creative producer, there are just so many different paths that you can take. My particular one started early in acting. I spent a long time in that world, really thinking that I wanted to be on Broadway stages, and maybe in another lifetime. But for this one, once I ended up moving from Tennessee to New York, I had the opportunity to just continue that grind and audition and really reach for the stars. There were some side gigs along the way, as you mentioned, that really taught me that my skill set and what I bring to the table in a really unique way is project planning and really looking at the creative holistically and saying, what are the resources we need to execute this, or what are we not thinking of when it comes to I think all of the facets beyond the talent, right? Because the reality is, I think a lot of artists and creatives, and we'll even say leadership in some way, they have a keen sense of how they want the creative to run, but a lot of the other things that you need to think about when you're putting on an installation, some sort of immersive experience, some sort of theatrical experience, are all of those other threads that have to that make the experience what it is. So I think once I ended up transitioning into all of the behind the stage sort of roles, stage managing, company managing, doing a bit of marketing. I did group sales for some small theaters in New York. I was able to sort of connect the dots to understand, oh, a lot of this is what a producer does. You need the skill set of all of these roles and just understanding how they come together. A lot of, again, those side gigs and moving to LA and sort of understanding a bit more about what experiential theater looks like, how people want to go to haunted houses and be terrified for 3 hours and they will pay very good money for that. How people also want to be sort of given narrative. Like people are really driven by story and they're driven by that story being told in a lot of different ways. So LA was, I think, my first experience and one stepping into a producer role officially and like understanding what it looks like to lead a team from that position. But also, like you said, just really understanding that what I value so much is bringing creative and community together and seeing how those two worlds are not too far from each other in reality, and how when they come together, it can be really powerful and really beautiful. And like you mentioned, the Pasadena Playhouse Block Party was a huge example of that. And the next year that it continued on, I would say, um, definitely continued that tradition, which was great. Um, and then from LA to moving here to Santa Fe, I think what really motivated me to start the Unusual Creative was I had just had a few different folks reach out to me, whether we had worked together in the past or I had just been recommended, to see how we could collaborate together. And I had a full time job and was really figuring out how I wanted to um, do both at the same time. There was a point where that didn't seem realistic, and then the times sort of shifted, and now I'm feeling like that's a bit more feasible. So it's just been a great way to sort of start a business that really represents my brand. It represents the things that matter to me. It isn't. It's an opportunity to work with creatives that I am really inspired by and excited by. And yeah, we're launching into our second year and yeah, this podcast sort of came up as a great opportunity to also let people know a bit more about myself, my personality, a bit more about what the Unusual Creative can do outside of the past projects that we've worked on. And yeah,
Mhm.
just a peek behind the curtain.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that you said, I think one that I wanted to pinpoint out was like everyone has ideas, right? I think everyone has a creative side of their inside them some way or somewhat. And so when you have this idea, it can be a great idea. It could be a small idea. It could be like the scale doesn't matter. But then depending on the resources that you have. Like you don't know how to execute this brilliant idea. It could be a product, it could be an art form, it could be like a dish or whatever it may be, right? So like if I come to you with a project and I have this amazing idea of a product or something or an experience, like what are the steps that you will take to look at this product and then like kind of as a project manager, what would the steps be like?
I think I'm always interested in if a collaboration between the two parties, unusual creative
Mhm.
and the client, is going to be um, mutually beneficial and if it makes sense, right? Like let's start there. I think I'm always going to just check in to see what your goals are looking like. Like, are they realistic? Are they aligned
Mhm.
with the experience that I bring to the table? That's important to assess early on. And then I'd also say just a better understanding of what are your resources. If we can
Mhm.
talk from a very realistic space, if there's no timeline and there's no budget, then the reality is I don't necessarily know that um, I have much to offer until one of those can be defined. And if this
Mhm.
feels like it's something that is like you're close to nailing that down, you just need to make some decisions, great. But if that feels like it's a bit further along, I think it's always helpful to just understand what resources are in place and then where you actually are looking for support. And then if it's like, oh, yeah, that's absolutely something that aligns with what we do, great. If it's something that is not the case, then let me recommend you
Mhm.
to somebody that can. So just getting a better understanding of like, what is firm and what is not firm, and if we have some clear understanding on the goals and the rails that are in place for this idea or business, new venture that you wanna.
Yeah. No, I think that's great because I feel like a lot of times what scares a lot of creatives is numbers, like
Mm.
financials, like budgets, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like where do we even start that? So then like I feel if unusual creative is somewhere that people know where to kind of come to for consulting. I think that's a great way um to start a partnership, to start like collaboration because I think your mind on collaborating between creative and bringing them to the community. I think it's like a very good like combination, if that makes sense.
Thank you. I think that is important to highlight because
Mhm.
consulting comes in all different forms. And yeah, we specifically specialize in scaling new ideas. So if you're looking to recreate something, but have a different impact or measure
Mhm.
different metrics, then we're a great resource for that. Or if you're just looking to execute it, you've never done it
Yeah.
before, you're really starting at the ground level and you just want to build it up in the best way possible, then yes, we can help with that.
So I feel like when you're in the consulting world, like you have to be very on top of the industry trend and like what's happening when around the world,
Mm,
right? And I
yeah.
think there's a lot of things that is changing with the AI and everything like that. Like what are some industry trends that you're excited about? And that's something that you're afraid about. Like, I think there's both sides to like how fast everything is changing.
That's a great point, and I think that is an exciting part about being a consultant is just keeping your pulse on, what is on the rise and then what's successful as well, because everything that is trending is not necessarily, quote, unquote, "doing well." But I think some industry trends that I'm excited about, and would like to see a bit more of is other industries understanding a bit more about the value of immersive theater. I feel like it was a buzzword for a long time. And now there are more, I'll say, C suite folks or, influencers that are going to these large scale immersive installations. They're either they're LARPing more, they're doing a little bit more. We'll just say tech forward theater, and uh, I think people are starting to understand that it's not necessarily just a buzzword. It might just truly be the direction that theater might be going in the next
Mhm.
5 to 10 years. I think that's exciting. I was talking to my dear friend Kashina about just new hubs for experiences. So the hotel industry, thinking about maybe some office spaces that aren't being utilized to the max. What are some spaces where maybe real estate uh, or commercial real estate and theater can sort of come together a bit more because theater houses are not the typical place where these experiences are happening anymore. And then I think another one that I'm just so eager to see more of is touring. The model of theater sort of crossing over and us seeing more AR experiences or maybe more um, just narrative experiential events that can live in different cities or maybe even be happening at the same time. I think that's how you build community, is
Mm.
when folks can go to different events and experience different things and then share on socials or share in different ways. Those are some things that I'd like to see more of.
That's really cool. I guess I've never heard of, what did you say? Tech
Tech forward theater.
or
So, like,
theater?
for example, we'll take something like uh, Delusion, which I worked on. That was an in-person live theater experience that got to be a part of a VR film. And the
Mhm.
VR film, when I say it was just as terrifying as the in-person experience, and I didn't know if that was possible to achieve, although I don't really do horror very well, but I felt in my bones, I was like, oh, they have really achieved something here that
The
even though you're watching it through VR goggles, you definitely looking around and the entire environment is just as detailed in the design as you would see in person. And again, I think something like if you take the model of Sleep No More, that is a model that has sustained for what is 10, 15 years. I don't know how long that
Mhm.
show has been running, but it's been at least a decade, I think. And if that could tour, if that could be in other spaces so that it doesn't necessarily have to be destination focused, um, what would that do for the brand? How would that change some of the different character stories that they could break off and then make other mini series, if you will?
Mhm. Mhm.
I just think, yeah, ways that VR can be involved. I at least now know an example that I've experienced that I'm like, "Whoa, that was really cool to see."
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's really cool. Um, I feel like we kind of talked a lot about your um professional background and like how you came about, but like I think I think it'll be really nice to know you a little bit more personally, like for people who are listening and watching you. Like I feel like we've connected in many different ways. Like we were coworkers and then we became friends and then now we're like bonded for life, kind of
Forever.
sisterhood,
Yeah.
forever. Yeah. So like I'm a mom and I know, you being a mom right now, and then like just kind of talk about your process of how that world kind of, how are you juggling? Like, how is that going on? Like, is it working for you? Is it like what is happening?
Oof. Every day is different. I feel like
Yeah.
and it's okay to say that. And maybe the
Mhm.
first yeah, maybe for a time it was like, yeah, I'm juggling it and it's going okay, but some days aren't great and some days are better than others. I will say it's really interesting to be on the other side of this role that you've heard about so much and you
Yeah.
have an understanding of it from,
Mhm.
what you've heard about, but then to actually do it and to do it in a really conscious and intentional way with a spirit that like my daughter's name is Frida. She's such a light, but she's such a fierce energy, which why should I be surprised? What I can say has translated and I really value in a different way is being humbled
Mm.
and really just understanding that like you don't have all the answers. You're not supposed to. That's not how any of this goes. And also that being continuing to be a forever student or to seek that student energy and to just always be learning and always be grateful for the opportunity to learn, um, I think is I think that's what gets me through the day to day as her mom and as a professional.
Yeah. Yeah.
Being really okay with the things that you don't know and being really okay with just like failure and
Yeah.
picking up after that.
Yeah. I think that's a really good way to look at it because they're your greatest teachers because they don't comprehend things or understand things the way that a lot of us do as an adult or whatever, we're grown ups. And I think they will, it makes no sense what they're doing, but then to them, it makes sense. So you're just kind of like in that world of trying to understand that. And sometimes I think about that in like a client way too. Like, what if my client is like this, like, but a 3-year-old toddler trying to make a sense out of this world? And I was just like, how do you make that conversation work in a way that she would understand, and then I would be understanding, that kind of stuff. So I think there's a huge part of understanding um both roles. And I think it brings you very it I think it gels like both, it goes back and forth. Like the world is very you take the lessons and you take it to the other world, and like vice versa, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um
It is cool to see how it translates too, because um yeah, just the amount of patience, the amount of patience, and then also just yeah, I think in some ways recognizing that you're dealing with humans.
mhm.
You're dealing with humans on all sides. So it's really up to you and the human that you've invested um in this venture with, or this collaboration with,
Yeah.
to see what comes out on the other side. So
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
sure.
I feel like, what is that then, like the both lives that you have, like together living this crazy hectic life, like what are like some of the things that is inspiring you, like to move forward, to do the things that you love to do?
Can I say that Wicked comes to mind? I thought
Oh my gosh.
yes, saying that, but I'm just gonna. I don't know what I was gonna say in its place, but I just saw Wicked uh, last weekend, and I know that you just recently saw it too. And you know what has been so funny to me is hearing people have this reaction of like, "Why is everybody crying? Or why are they crying so much?" And I'm like, "You guys, because life is hard, and
Mhm.
especially these days, let's just be very transparent." And yeah, I feel like that show, or that movie, um, was a spectacle in the best way. I feel like it was. I don't know, sometimes I see, and this is no disrespect to action movie lovers, but maybe you see a budget of the same caliber with an action movie, and I really can't see the money or the investment. And there's something about Wicked that I'm like, every single thing that they did to get to this point
It hit.
yeah, makes sense. Yes, exactly. The
Yeah.
casting, the choices, the live rehearsals, the live singing, the ways that they really went there and really made the parallels in the story.
Yeah. Their stunt that they did.
I mean, yes, I can't wait to see part two. Even just talking about it, I am getting so excited. So
Yeah, I know.
it's inspiring for me. The new Kendrick album is hitting.
Ooh.
Is hidden. I'm not gonna say much else except for, go listen now if you haven't. And then, yeah, I'll just give Frida her credit, a daily inspiration in my life. Every time she learns a new word, every time she writes her letters, every time I get a hug,
Well,
it's a good day. I'm so glad that you asked that actually, Rachel. Same question back to you. What's been inspiring you lately?
so, as we talk, like, I'm a full-time mom currently. I left my job. I think after 6 months, I had my firstborn. So my first is 3.5 years old, and my second, right now, he just turned one like a month ago. And you kind of like juggling through the motherhood of Naya, what you said, of a life that you heard about from people, or and then now you're that person who have to provide for them, who have to give all the caring and stuff like that. It's really hard. It's not a life that I recommend to a lot of people. But a true inspiration that comes from all this thing is like, I do love watching them grow. I love the things that they say. And my daughter started singing. Singing, but like she started singing in like her own lyrics. Like, she would say, like, she would narrate what's happening, but in a singing voice. I've never seen her do that before, which is very sweet to just kind of watch. Um, my son is in love with my daughter. Like, his eyes are just like hearts all the time she's around. So kind of looking at their relationship is a very good. it's therapy for me in the way that I watch that. And then of course there's like a lot of my friends like you and other people who do who do what they love to do like this. And that really does inspire me because I feel like I think at one point in our lives we all had dreams. We all had the things that we wanted to do. And we shared, there are calls that we had, you and I too, about what we wanted to do and how we wanted to like move forward with our lives and all this other stuff, like struggles and all these things that we have. But you know, out of like seeing all that journey and like now where we are and still dreaming about stuff that we want to do, like, you creating this space for people to actually um like pursue their dreams. I think it's a beautiful way. I see a lot of people going on and doing what they love to do. Watching that is such a blessing and a gift, and I get inspired by that almost like every day. We talk about how social media is like such a bad influence on a lot of things because you're always comparing. But like truly the part of me is like, oh my gosh, girlfriend's doing it, you know, like something like that. I'm just always very um hopeful, and there's a part of me that I can always do it too. Like at the end of all this, like at the end of like, a couple of years later down the line, I could always pick up and call you up.
Absolutely. That's the plan. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it is a privilege at the end of the day to have a dream, have a vision, and one, to have it, and two, to go after it.
Yeah.
And yeah, to live in a space where I am able to help folks do that.
A lot of people have a dream and it's just don't know where they're going. But I think with what you're doing, I think it's a beautiful thing because you kind of steer them in the direction that they have to be. And if the direction you go and then you like meet a stopping point, maybe that's like the end of the relationship. But like at least you get them towards where they have to be. You know what I mean? So I believe that, you know, what you're doing is such a beautiful thing. And I get inspired by you every day. And I'm always like shouting out for you and rooting for you.
Thank you, friend. You too. I so appreciate it. Okay, audience. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back for another episode soon. Thank you.